Welcome to the Geekverse. I'm Heath. If you're enjoying the videos, please like, subscribe, and consider joining us for the Morning Grind live streams each day. Together, we can be a very positive and constructive force in the Geekverse. Now let's get to it. Let's talk for a minute about AIDMs. And by AIDMs, what I'm talking about is dungeon masters or game masters for role-playing games in general that are entirely artificial intelligence. And I think we specifically need to talk about the position that Wizards of the Coast articulated about AIDMs during the entire OGL controversy, because I don't think that it got enough attention with everything else going on. But this is definitely something that we're going to have to grapple with in the tabletop game industry and community in general in the coming, well, years, but who knows, maybe even just months. So on January 18th, DnD Beyond tweeted that no one at Wizards is working on AIDMs. We love our human DMs too much. And I thought this was a very interesting thing to say. I wasn't so much focused on this, but I think the reason they put out this clarification is because we know that there is this shift toward the virtual tabletop and all of that with 1D&D or 6th edition or whatever you want to call it. And so the Game Master becoming an AI might have been something that people were concerned about. But when I saw this tweet, it said, no one at Wizards is working on AIDMs. My immediate thought was, why not? Why would no one at Wizards be working on that? Because as soon as I first started to experiment with ChatGPT, this was several months ago, I mean, one of the very first things that I did was try to see if it could DM me through some kind of basic dungeon. And that was several months ago, and I think that it's only even getting better at that kind of thing now. So I know that it's not that nobody has ever thought of that. I mean, that has to be basically the first thing you think of when you open up something like ChatGPT, and then in the future with other more advanced AI technology and everything else. So now some people had pointed out that maybe it's true that no one at Wizards is working on AIDMs, but that's because they are contracting it out. So maybe somebody else at some other contractor or some other company they are working with are working on AIDMs, and that's the way they're going to move it in. But, I mean, that's some weaselly language, but then again, they have used some kind of language like that in the past. But you would think they were trying to make this clarification. You know, this blanket statement, no one at Wizards is working on AIDMs. Well, if they're not, somebody else is. I mean, that seems like, from the business perspective, to be where all of this is going, right? And so why would they not be working on it? Because if it's not going to be Wizards of the Coast, it's going to be somebody else. I mean, think about all the different virtual tabletops that there are. I'm sure that people working on them have said, now, wait a minute, can't we at least start to help human DMs or GMs with artificial intelligence at the table, and then eventually be able to completely take over the game master responsibilities and give the players a fantastic experience that they want. I know some of them have to be thinking about that. So why wouldn't Wizards? It almost in some sense seems negligent if you were trying to maintain market lead here. Because I do think that as all of this develops, I mean, more and more of the things that we consume, whether that's art or whether that's music or whether it's a game or a novel or whatever, and I think increasingly video as well, these things are going to be AI generated. So it seems like the recognition of that and then figuring out how you're going to position yourself would be an important part of a business strategy. So I've got several questions for us as a community. The first thing is, do you believe that? When Wizards says that nobody at their company is working on AIDMs, do you believe it, or do you think there's some type of workaround in there that allows them to be doing it even though they're stating the opposite? Also, would you be willing to play at a table with an AIDM? I think I would. I mean, it's only going to get better and better. I am sure there will be some out in the very beginning that aren't very good, but they're only going to get better and better. And hey, sometimes you might want to sit down and play something and you don't have a game master available. So I would certainly consider playing a game that's being dungeon mastered or game mastered by an AI. Also, what parts of the Game Master experience do you think are most ripe to go ahead and move over to artificial intelligence anyway? That hybrid element about where you do have a human that is your Game Master, your Dungeon Master, but an artificial intelligence is helping to take over some of the parts of the game. I think that could be very useful. That way the human can focus on the parts of the game and that the human is best able to do at that particular stage of technology of the AI, and the AI can handle everything else. Things like monster movement during combat. I mean, we already automate that through rudimentary physical AI in games like Kingdom Death or Frosthaven or even Darkest Dungeon. Doesn't it have a card-based AI for its bad guys? I think it does. But at any rate, there are already games that are doing that. So why doesn't the monsters in Dungeons and Dragons and then other role-playing games in general have some type of AI like that that could be used to automate them the way they actually play during the game. Then when the monster shows up, the game master doesn't have to, move the monster around, make it overridable, but then that way the monster would behave as the monster is supposed to play, and the game master can be thinking about other things or just thinking about the strategy of the big bad guy who he's going to be running, and making that one as dangerous as possible while the AI runs all of the other minions, like a bunch of different goblins or skeletons. Do we already have that? It kind of seems like we should. That seems like an obvious place to have the AI help out and augment, run the game faster, and take some of the load off of the game master. Generation of NPCs? That's probably happening already. The ability to talk to NPCs, it would be really nice if the players could be able to talk to NPCs without the game master having to deal with that player individually. If the player walks off, goes down to the tavern, has a drink, wants to talk about rumors, or goes shopping and wants to have a bit of a conversation with the blacksmith, why couldn't that be handled by AI? That seems like the perfect situation for that thing. That way the player can go ahead and have the experience they want to have, but doesn't necessarily have to have the game master, looking at that and managing that situation. The game master can be managing the situation with another player that might require a lot more attention, while those mundane tasks and interaction with NPCs can be handled by an AI. I think that would be a great idea. So who is the leader in AI technology for the virtual tabletop right now, or who is going to be? Is there a company that's already starting to integrate that technology into their VTT? I'd really like to know. Now, another question that everyone wants to talk about is, when does that actually make it become no longer a tabletop game, but a video game? And of course, I think that distinction is going to get blurred, right? We understand some things about tabletop games, and I think we could come up with some kind of core element about what that is. Wizards of the Coast was trying to make the distinction between a tabletop game and a video game, whether or not you're using something like an animation for a spell. And it seems like the community did rather reject that interpretation. I saw much better ideas on the internet about what it actually means to be a virtual tabletop game versus just a video game. And some of those did have to do with the presence of a human running all of the monsters and being the game master. And I think there were much more intelligent ways to make that distinction, if one even needs to be made between a video game and a tabletop game. Maybe the two are just going to blur so much that we won't even really have to think about a distinction between those two. So what do you think about AI DMs? Are you looking forward to them? Are you planning on embracing them? Are you planning on just rejecting them completely? Or are you really hoping that maybe the AI gets here pretty soon and really fast to replace your existing game master? Maybe he's really terrible and you really need an AI for that. But we need to think about this. So what are we going to do about this? Because AI is coming. It's going to be an increasingly large part of our life. And I'm interested to know, where are we going to stand on this as far as the community goes?